We're live. All right, welcome to the 2014 Global Tasting. On our 1-year anniversary now, the first year we had this tasting. We had Adam Zuniga with us. We have him again this year, except the only difference is now he's a member of the Sixpoint team. So it's a kind of a nerdy romance here. We met on a blog, and he started tasting beers, and now he's part of the Renaissance. But this time, we actually have a pretty cool international crew assembled. And what I'd like to do is just make the introduction to go make the rounds here. So it looks like on my screen at least, I don't know if I see the same direction or sequence as you, but we have Carlos representing from Brazil. So Carlos, why don't you tell everyone kind of your background and how you got into beer and how we met and all that stuff.
Hi, hello guys. As Shane said, I'm from Brazil. Well, I joined the beer business, since 2009 during a beer trip in Europe, where I discovered.
Hey, Carlos. Carlos, you'll have to start again. Unmute yourself. Somebody is listening to YouTube.
I don't think it's me.
Can you hear me now?
There you go. Shane, Chris, you guys are muted in New York there too. Chris, you'll have to Control-D to unmute Shane Welch.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that may have happened without us knowing about it. But for what you do is just keep an eye on your profile, and if you see the crossbar going over the microphone, that means somehow you got muted. Anyway, Carlos, can you restart that?
Sure. Well, give me a minute. Yes, I'm on. Well, I joined the beer business in 2008 when I had a trip to Europe. And at that time in Brazil, we had only pretty much American lagers being sold here. We had craft breweries at that moment, but was not that common, So when I came back from this trip from Europe, I spent like 2 months there. Then when I really discovered that there was much more beers or different beer styles than the ones that I was using in Brazil, I started to learn, read different books, and I found several courses related to beer. Then I had the beer sommelier course on the Domains Academy, right, in 2010, late 2010. And then since this time, 2010, I started to work with beer importation in Brazil, and also marketing and sales of craft beer in Brazil, right? And then I'm working with this has 4 years, 3 years and a half already. And early this year, I launched this website, socialbeers.com.br. And this website is pretty much a crowdfunding platform. And then we built our own crowdfunding platform to use people's funding in order to release unique recipes and unique beers. So we are creating collaborative beers between Brazilian breweries and breweries outside Brazil. And besides that, we are supporting the home brewing in Brazil by getting the good recipes from home breweries and brewing in a large scale, and everything based on crowdfunding.
Okay, so just so everyone is like a good understanding, because I'm familiar with, I've seen it firsthand. Aaron and I were working with you in Sao Paulo earlier in the year. So Carlos basically invented this pretty cool platform working with a couple other partners where there's a craft beer scene in Brazil, but it's very small right now and it's being incubated. But one of the biggest problems is there's enormous barriers to entry for craft brewers. So he works on a platform where they're able to basically crowdfund and get beers going, get them launched, and basically have 100% of the demand built in. So there's virtually no risk, and it's a way for brewers to get their product out there without having to go through extraordinary means to raise money. It's pretty cool. It's almost it might be worth a Nobel Prize, I think, actually. So let's go over to Jeff in Portland. What's your story, dude?
Do I have is my mute off? Can you hear me?
Yeah. You're good.
Okay. Well, I'm a writer. I live in Portland. I'm pleased to see that we have two Portlanders here because in Portland we think we are the beer world. So a global thing should have two Portlanders.
Yeah.
Not really, but we do have that kind of insularity. Actually, I think Brooklyn and Portland have a lot in common. So it's kind of nice that we've got that connection. I write about beer, and I think I got hooked up with you guys originally when I was writing a book called The Beer Bible, which will come out next year. And I was interested in sweet action, so I contacted you to find out some more, and then you sent me some beer, which I like quite a bit. I talk about sweet action in the book, so that's what I do. I also have a blog called Beervana, which is I think the name that you see there.
Yeah, one of the things that I've noticed in the Portland beer scene, not only do you have tons of breweries, but you have tons of people who are like contributing to craft beer beyond just brewing. So you have like yourself and Lisa, and then other famous bloggers, at least in the beer community, who for a relatively small city compared to big cities like New York and London, classic publishing powerhouse cities, you have a disproportionate amount of people like contributing to the journalism side of things as well. That's pretty cool.
It's true, and
let's do one of these like David Letterman plugs for your book. So you got this book coming out next year, right? When does it hit? When does it hit Amazon.com?
Well, I think you can pre-order now, so I encourage everyone to do that.
So Chris, if you can flash the link going. Yeah. All right, let's go over to Lisa. I mean, Lisa, we've had plenty of pints together. I wish everyone had the ability to share one with you because you're so much fun. Tell us about your story and how you got into beer. Oh, you're on mute. So let's start over. Hold on before we get too far. You just gotta unclick the mic there. Still on mute. For some reason, she's on mute. Okay.
The top icon.
It's second from the left. There's 5 icons
on the top of your screen.
There we go. How's that?
Perfect. Now we're good.
Excellent. Yep. Cool. So first of all, I'd like to say that Jeff has in his typical way, very much downplayed his influence here in Portland, but he actually has been. He started writing for Willamette Week, which is our weekly alternative paper. He wrote about beer back in I want to say the 90s, I believe. Am I right? And he's been contributing ever since. So he's downplaying his influence as per usual with him. But so me, I started. There's people like Jeff and Fred Eckhart. I was a journalist by trade and had been and fell in love with craft beer, which before we even called it craft beer. And one day, decided, hey, I could actually probably write about this stuff too. So I talked to an employer that I wound up working with for about 11 years. They were hiring to do a website for TV station in Portland, and they were a startup company and they didn't want to give me a lot of money, so I talked them into letting me write a beer column, which I'm sure they thought was kind of crazy because they're thinking, okay, so this gal doesn't really want the amount of money that we want to pay her, but now she wants to do more work. Yeah. But that was back in 1996 Kevin, and I've been writing about beer ever since. I've got a book out. I have a radio show that's on once a week called Beer Clock, and I also am part owner of Belmont Station, which is a beer bar and bottle shop here in Portland as well. So been involved for quite a while, and I'm consider myself very fortunate to be a part of this community.
So for those of the people listening out there, I'd imagine that a lot of them will probably be going to Portland for the 2015 Craft Brewers Conference, so they'll be passing through. And I just recommend to everyone who is to stop by Belmont for sure. Place is iconic, you know. I think that one of the things that you don't always see here, but is very typical where you are, is the combination of the bottle shop connected to either as an annex or right in the bar. You know, so like you can go there and chill and drink in the bar, or you could grab some bottles to go, or both. You can buy the bottles in the bar and go drink, or in the shop and then go chill in the bar, which is always nice because you know you can pick up some Alaskan smoke porters and then go rock them in the jammer in the back. So let's keep going now. Are we going to Virginia here? Are we out in D.C. today, or no? I think Matt's in Stoughton, Virginia.
Yes, I'm in my basement in Stanton, Virginia. We did a show here a couple of weeks ago with Shane. We were in Charlottesville for that show.
Right. Because I was confused as to where we were going to be tonight. But this dude, you got like a whole production studio going on down there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, this is the command center here. So yeah, we try to make it real. You know, we do 2 hangouts a week. So this started 2.5 years ago when Google introduced Hangouts. I said, you know, I've got 2 kids. I really can't go out on a Friday night and tie them on like I could when I was in my 20s. So I want to go to my basement and drink. But if you do that alone, then you're kind of an alcoholic, or you got other problems. So I found a group of people, and there are 20 of us. 10 of us or so would get together on a Friday night and just drink and talk about beer. And then a year and a half ago, they started to let you record and broadcast these. So we just started broadcasting them as Hangouts on air. And we have a theme each week, and we go from there. And really now we do a show. We do two shows a week. Our big one is our Pints and Quarts, which is a half-hour show where we interview different people. We interviewed Shane a few weeks ago. And you know, we got Dave Engbers on in a couple of weeks from Founders. So it's just kind of, we have a blog, but it isn't really we're not really creating content that way. We're creating content with face-to-face interviews on YouTube and our podcast. So it's fun, and I get to drink great beer and then talk about it with interesting people. So who wouldn't want to mix those 2 things together?
Yeah, and on top of that, you have the greatest webcam in the history of webcams.
I do.
I can see the pores on your skin, man.
I have an HD. Well, I'll tell you what it is. I have an HD cam, a little bit of house lighting here, and then I have a 50 megabyte megabit internet connection, so I get true HD. So, yeah, it would be better if one of the prettier girls had this camera and this whole setup, but I just have to make do with the big fat white guy. So.
Well, they always said I have a face for radio, you know.
Yeah, but when you want a good shot of the beer up or something like that, I'm your guy. You know, we can get a global warmer can right up in there and nice high resolution. So. There
you go. Right on, man. I mean, I had no idea that you were that prolific with the broadcasting that you're doing. I mean, if you're doing 2 of these suckers a week, you're archiving massive amounts of data.
We are, in fact, and my wife just is so thrilled.
Yeah, you can imagine.
Yeah. Oh, you have another hangout tonight. That's great, honey. That's great. I'll take care of the kids. You go drink with Sixpoint. Yeah. So she's actually
a lot of ways you got to have, like, in terms of you know. Actually, on Sunday, 2 days ago, I hosted 2 due to another nerdy encounter. Right. So I met 2 guys on Beer Advocate, and they said that they were coming into town, so we had a tour of the brewery on a Sunday afternoon, and this kind of stuff's great, man. I mean, you meeting beer folks through social media, and
well, it landed Adam a job, right? So is this?
This guy
I will vouch for it firsthand.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Are you guys? You know, there's only 5 of us to pick from for your next position, so the chances are good.
So I think what we got to do is go across the Atlantic now, right?
Yeah, go way east.
So, what time is it over there?
It's it must be 20 past midnight.
Oh yeah.
And
now, did you have a later? So you had an earlier event tonight, right? You were coming from a separate event. You said that you were doing.
No, it's actually tomorrow. I will have very little sleep, and then I will get up and go and run a beer and food matching masterclass for British publicans.
Oh, nice.
So I'll be slapping myself around the face with a wet fish in the morning.
Is that like some type of slang? Because I don't know.
Yes, it's a very British kind of slang.
Okay.
It doesn't mean anything rude.
Okay, good. So,
very proper.
What exactly? I mean, I see that in the title. You're a beer sommelier. Is that because the British refused to recognize the title of a cicerone? Or I'm just curious as to what the designation is overseas. Like, how does that work?
It is different, but a beer sommelier here in the UK is a recognised accreditation. So I've sat an exam and been examined and had my beer knowledge thoroughly examined and then endorsed as being that I know what I'm talking about. And it's a qualification that's run here by the Beer Academy, and they're part of the Institute of Brewing and Distilling. So you'll find over here that Brewdog, for example, who I'm sure you guys have heard of, quite a lot of their staff are actually cicerones or certified beer servers, and they haven't gone for the kind of beer sommelier qualification. But there's more than 50 of us now, and I hold the sort of small claim to fame of being the first woman to be accredited as a beer sommelier in the UK.
Hell, yes, there you go. I think that deserves a little fist pump right there. So that's cool. I mean, I knew that because everyone submitted their information, I knew you wouldn't have designated it as beer sommelier if it wasn't like had significance, you know. And it's interesting because the wine designation is an international like accreditation, so everyone is kind of taking the same types of exams to develop the 4 levels of being a wine sommelier. What's interesting is I wonder if if every country doesn't have a unified format for beer, how that's going to play out, you know, internationally, because I think we're now up to over 1,000, I think, cicerones here in the U.S.
Right.
And it's really booming now at this point. By the way, just out of curiosity, what is that in the background? It looks like some type of design sketches or something. Or
oh, it's a wall hanging. It's some kind of Celtic knot that I bought round Camden Market in North London many years ago.
It looks like a psychedelic pretzel or something.
That's how I'm always going to think of it now.
Maybe it's just because I'm hungry right now. And
It looks like a phallic pretzel.
Yeah, there you go, a Gaelic pretzel. So I would actually like to. I would like to actually let's just dive into this. Has everyone poured out their beer? Has everyone
yes.
gotten their full sample? Okay, so everyone's got it rocking here. Now, the first thing I want to do is give a little ad about this color right here. Yeah. Oh yeah. That's kind of a shameless product. Oh, whoa, the medallion. The medallion. But I hope you're kind of seeing the same color in your glassware as ours. I mean, it's all coming out of one tank, so it should be. But the idea for this beer in terms of color was to go for just about as deep as an amber color as you could get without it being brown. You know what I mean? Like very, very deep red. And just so everyone knows, like if you didn't do the research on it, like the intent or the genesis behind the beer. This is a beer that has a long history, a long brewing history tied to it. So this beer was actually first brewed in 1999, a homebrew recipe. It was resurrected in 2005 at Sixpoint Brewery, draft only, brewed for a couple years here, and then re-brewed in 2012 2012, and then 2013 we released it for cans the first time. It's really pretty old in terms of the original formulation. So here's where the idea or the name came from. So the original formulation was being made in December, and it was one of those days where it was super hot outside when it shouldn't have been, like 75 degrees in December. So we were brewing in our shorts, and we, instead of making a English-style winter warmer, which would have had a lot of nutmeg and maybe some mace, you know, you got to throw some mace in there, and you know what I'm saying? Right. Maybe some cinnamon sticks in there, and we were like, nah, let's do a little something more indigenous. And we came up with the global warmer to replace the winter warmer style. And this is one of those jammers that when we first released it, it was a real pleasure to kind of like give people a nice whiff of some piney hops and make it nice, big toasty beer, like a toasted gingerbread cookie with a little bit of tingly spice in it. Only from hops though. No mace. There was no mace put into this beer, and I wanted to get a feel for just like get people to go off with their poetic license of what they taste when they taste this beer. So I'm actually gonna start over with Matt, because I have a feeling that this dude he does it twice a week. So I'd like to hear him just go off. Like, is this your first time trying it, by the way?
No, I had it from last year, and then I got a 6-pack of it this week, and I drank 4 of them leading up to the show. You know, just for research. You know, you gotta be prepared for conversations.
Sure.
But from what I remember of it last year, and maybe I didn't have it as fresh last year, but there definitely is a real piney. I get some citrus in the hops from the nose, and then it just delivers. I don't get the spice. I don't get the warmer. You know, when I hear the word warmer, I think a high ABV, a boozy kind of warming sensation in the chest, and this to me drinks like a crisp IPA. With regards to bitter in the finish and that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, I mean, what Sixpoint has always done has always been great at delivering aroma with whatever your dry hopping regulations and rules are. But no, I get pine, I get citrus, I get lots of bitter in the taste. I don't get much. I mean, there are some caramel malts there in the body, but it really is a hop first beer for me.
What about Lisa? What are you thinking? I mean, every time I go into Belmont, there's about 5 to 10 like beers that could pretty much, it's like a hop grenade on your tongue. I mean, you know, the access that you have to those types of beers are just nothing like out here. But how would this kind of integrate? Where do you see this kind of fitting in terms of, does it remind you of anything, or is it in anything in a class of its own, or what? When you first taste it, knowing that it says global warmer and it's nondescript, right? What are the impressions that you have?
Well, I would definitely agree with a lot of the things that Matt said, and I think that I mean, even for my tough Northwest palate, there's a lot of hops in this baby. I mean, it's got it going on, and I love the aroma. I love the little backbone, just kind of a thread of kind of a deep caramel malt in there that carries it along, and then we've got this beautiful, beautiful, just bursting hop aroma of pine and just a touch of citrus. It's one of those ones that, I mean, it kind of reminds me of maybe a celebration ale on steroids. But yeah, I mean, I think
steroids or the ones that you inject into your ass. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out if are we taking creatine here or muscle milk?
Not bad steroids at all. Very good steroids. The ones that make you happy.
Those are great, man. I love those.
And it honestly tastes like another. That's all I can say. I love it.
Good, good. Now, I would like to let's get some foreign viewpoints here. You know, why don't we go over to the UK? because this has got to see what I notice when we visit the UK. You drink higher ABV beers are more of a luxury for you because you guys have that tax system where the higher the beer alcohol is, you just keep getting higher and higher taxes. So like all the cask beers are generally pretty low, right? And even a strong beer by your standards would maybe be 5 or 6%. But the craft brewers nowadays are the ones who are making the more potent beers, right? But how would this fit into, like, I mean, there's not real, even as a winter warmer, it would still be considered pretty aggressive, right? And by the way, how popular are winter warmers anymore? Are people drinking those, or is it not really? That's kind of your grandpa's beer, or what is? How does that fit in?
I think the thing about winter warmers and the thing about this is that it would terrify publicans for the reasons that you've just highlighted, which is here in the UK we're more used to a kind of 4.5% ABV session pint, and for me a beer like this, I'm not going to drink several pints of it. That's not to say that it isn't delicious, because it is delicious. But you've got these very powerful hops obviously going on, and I'm getting the warming kind of sensation actually. I'm getting that kind of thing. So winter warmers also quite high ABV here in the UK, not so popular. We're still, I think, there's lots of beer lovers and people who are into the craft beer scene, and they would really appreciate this. But I think your average drinker would still take a little bit of turning round in the UK. But it smells fantastic. And I was getting a kind of nettly, kind of zesty aroma, maybe with a kind of hint of passion fruits kind of shooting through. That kind of subsides and sort of becomes a bit more pithy, a bit more piney and sort of resiny. And I'm getting some wonderful flavours of kind of blood oranges and pink grapefruit coming through in here. And I love the bitterness. And one of the things that I mourn in UK beers is that brewers seem to be really afraid of putting lots of hops in things. And I've been drinking beer for sort of 25 years. And when I started drinking beer, I used to drink pints of bitter. And bitter was bitter. So this is a nice bitter beer, and I really like it for that. I think you'll find among beer aficionados, it would go down really well here in the UK. They'd like those hops.
Yeah, the reason I bring it up is we've been invited or asked for next year to do a cask version of the global warmer just for the UK.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Do it.
We might have to adjust the ABV on it a bit, because the 7% cask beer of this strength might be a little bit devastating for some folks. And that's the thing is, what's funny is you said, oh, it's not a session beer, but over here 7% is now sessionable. It's pretty crazy. I mean, people are like, oh, it's only 7? Oh, I could have a 6-pack of that.
Oh, come on, you guys are starting to brew these kind of 4.5% session beers as well. You know it's coming.
Yeah, there's definitely a place for that for sure. Carlos, you want to chime in? And is this your first time trying the global warmer, or did you have it last year?
No, I didn't have last year. This is my first time.
Okay.
And this is my second can already, and I'm going crazy because I have only 4 left, and I need more.
Okay. By the way, as a side note tonight, we did lose a couple of our. We had we cast a wider net, but we had some package interceptions en route. So we're very lucky and blessed to have the people that we have tonight, because 2 people had some interceptions. Anyway, as you were saying.
Yes, and I agree with what Lisa said. Like, I love the aroma. I felt a lot of herbal and fruity aroma in the beer. And one thing that I realized as well is it's the head. It's very persistent. Like, at least for me in Brazil, we don't used to have good quality on the heads of the beer, but we can see that it's very persistent here. And one thing about what I think that's a very strong characteristic of a 6-point is the balance between the alcohol and the ABV and the dry finish. So it's a little bit dangerous because 7% is not something low; it's a little bit high, and the dry finish makes us keep drinking and drinking and drinking, and this it's really dangerous. So sincerely speaking, I really love the beer.
All right, Jeff, Jeff, you gotta have one in the beer community, probably maybe the oldest continuously running blog in the entire craft beer community, right? I can't think of anyone else who, right? You go back to the what?
Are you saying I'm old?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm saying you're an ancient old dude, man. I'm saying you are.
I think there are actually a couple of oldsters out there who have even older blogs than I do, but it's true. I've been doing this in January. It'll be 9 years. My blog has been around, so it's been a while.
Right on, man.
So
you tasted a lot of beers, so you have a valid perspective. So let's see, like, where does this kind of fit into your perception, so to speak?
Well, so in the Northwest, the winter warmer style was one of the more popular early styles back in the mid to late 90s. They started to come on, and it's one of my favorite styles, and they can be anything. There's winter warmers doesn't have there's no style description that goes with it, but one thing that I grew, my personal kind of acid test was, there's something about, here in Oregon, for people who don't know, we have these massive old forests, these huge trees. And when we think of the holidays and Christmas, I always think of, our big Douglas firs. So a lot of our early winter warmers had a really pine bough or forest floor quality. So I always kind of look for that. To me, that signals winter. And this really captures that. That's the first thing I was noticing. You really pick it up in the aroma. It just smells like walking through a winter forest. It's very nice. I'll second what Carlos says. I think the alcohol is really well concealed. This is a dangerous beer. You could drink a lot of this without, you could get in trouble. It doesn't taste boozy at all. It's very gentle. The elements are nicely in balance. I was really surprised to hear you say that the original recipe goes back to '99 because it's also pretty modern. In 1999, when you made a hoppy beer, you made it very bitter. You balanced that with a ton of thick caramel malts, and it was kind of this, assault on the palate. Both it was really thick and cakey, and also really bitter. And we've moved much more to these more delicate-looking beers that are clear. They're not cakey, and then the hops are tending toward the late edition, so you get all the aroma and the flavor, that pine bough stuff. It seems very modern, so I was kind of surprised to hear that it goes back to '99. I think you might have been ahead of your time. It seems very, very contemporary. So it's a great beer. In Oregon, we love hops, and I don't think anybody would turn down a pint of this. This is like a solid wintry IPA.
Nice. Well, there's one person we didn't get to hear from yet. All right, bro, let's unload.
So, what do we have so far? Good head, and that it scares Republicans. Is that what I heard about?
Wait, what?
No, I'll say the same thing I said last year, and however it may sound is, congrats on making a red beer, a red ale that doesn't suck. Honestly, because
file that under D for dozen.
There's two things I love about this beer. Like it's rebellion against what winter warmers have been traditionally, and I think it's also an improvement on what American red ales have been recently. Something you'll typically find among like white bread and craft singles. It's just an excessively sweet, relatively mundane product. Typically a vessel is just to where the caramel malt dominates, but I think in this case like the hops, that like classic big C American hop profile. It not only tames the caramel malts, but it overturns them. It dominates. This is a hop forward, hop first kind of beer. And we all know that that's my bias, so a lot of love.
When it comes to this beer, though, it's so like, let me just share with everyone's insight. All you have different perspectives on the industry based upon, you know, we got journalists and bloggers and authors and tasters and etc. When you're creating like a portfolio of beers, like at a craft brewery, it's kind of important to develop sort of like a proprietary style. So like our customers over time, they expect a certain flavor from us. And what's really weird is like sometimes we brew a beer and we think it's really great, but it doesn't kind of fit the pattern or the trend of what we normally do. And when they taste it, they think it's horrible. And the reason why is because it doesn't match what their expectations are. So like there's certain breweries that you know, and you can probably name like 3 or 4 off the top of your head, where you know every time you get one of their beers, it's going to be a hop bomb, right? So if they came out with a beer that was like sweet and fruity, you would almost you would buy it. It's a new beer. You're excited by it. You take it home and you're like, oh man, this sucks, right? But it may be a really good beer. It's just it wasn't meeting your expectations. So for those who followed our brand and like our brewery from the beginning, knew that we have been making these styles of beer for a long time on the East Coast, which was a little bit of a shock for people at the time. Like one of the reasons why Adam and I connected was he was from the West Coast. He actually went to school in Portland. Didn't you go to Reed?
Reed College.
He went to Reed College.
Hello, Portland.
And he was living in California for a while, so when he moved back east, he couldn't really find this type of flavor profile available. So with that in mind, like I wanted to get some feedback from some people about, yeah, Jeff kind of had an insight on it, but like, do you think that this trend can continue? And what I mean by this is like, it seems like there's a game of brinksmanship going on where brewers are daring each other, and consumers for that are ravenous about it. Like, can you make beers even more aggressively hoppy than they are? And you're seeing what used to be considered outrageous. I remember Sam Adams 10 years ago or 15 years ago would brag that they used to use 1 pound of hops per barrel. They would put it on their advertising. We use 1 pound of hops per barrel in our brew, which at the time was revolutionary. I just drank a beer, I'm not shitting you, that had 50 pounds of hops per barrel. Now they were wet hops, but at the same time, that's still 50 pounds per barrel. I don't even think you can fit 50 pounds in a barrel. So it's kind of funny how they managed to do that. But there's got to be a saturation point. And Jeff, where do you think this is going? Do you think this is a fad? Because I say this to people. The reason why I bring this up, I say to people, oh, it could be a fad, and they look at you like you're crazy. But dude, 20 years ago, I thought light beer was going to be a fad, and it had an amazing trajectory, and now it's in decline, right? So who's to say that hoppy beers like IPAs one day will be like bell bottoms, and people will be like, hey, remember when we used to drink those things? And now they're kind of like out of style. So what do you think? Where do you think this is going?
Oh, well, I think hops are the American signature. When I was traveling around the world, every time I went to a country and they brewed an American-style beer, what they meant was, is hoppy. And usually had American hops, right? Like, because now our hops are as famous as Saaz or East Coast Goldings. They're really characteristic, and they define a kind of brewing. But I think there's so much versatility in the way that you can brew with hops that even within, you go to a brewery and they'll have like 2 pales and 3 IPAs, and they're all quite different. So all the hops we have, the ways you can use hops, where you use them in the boil, if you use them if you use a hop back or you dry hop, all these kind of ways to use hops, all the different kinds of hops, means the breweries have a really broad palette. And my guess is people will begin to sort themselves based on the types of beers they like. I mean, probably a lot of people will continue to like hoppy beers, but some people will choose, certain, like you're going to have your Sierra Nevada people, your Sixpoint people, your Stone people, and they're gonna look for that house character that signals to them, I want this kind of beer, but I want it to be a Sixpoint beer. I want it to have these qualities that I admired in the other beers that I got there. I think breweries will be able to sort themselves that way pretty well. And as long as you make a great beer and you have a distinctive flavor, kind of house approach, I think you'll find an audience. That's my guess, if I had to put money on it.
Okay, interesting. So, Lisa, you get access to so many different styles, right? What do you see as one of the best things, because you're the only one, I think, on our panel that has operates a pub, right? So you have the data. You get to look at the data of the store and the pub, right? And are you seeing any slowdown in like the trend towards these types of beers, or is it just accelerating?
It's interesting. One of the things that I've noticed, being a beer drinker in the Pacific Northwest for a long, long time, is something that I'm actually seeing happening across the country as more and more people are beginning to appreciate craft beer. And what I've noticed is when you start drinking craft beer or beer with any sort of flavor, you start out at a level of hops that is more sweet and malty than hoppy. And as you continue to drink, your palate gets conditioned and you start enjoying those hops more. What happened to us in Portland and in the Northwest, probably, I'm going to say, maybe in the late 90s, early 2000s, is we hit a peak. And it was kind of like drinking hop juice for a while there. It was super, super hoppy. It would strip the enamel off your teeth. And you would that was basically it. There was no malty background or backbone or anything. But then we started backing off. And if you look at it like a bell curve, it kind of started like, this, and it goes up, 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 up in terms of hoppiness. And now we're backing down a little bit. We're never going to get back down to where we were in sweetness, but we have kind of rounded this corner where I find that we are appreciating beers with a little more balance. And I think that we have the down under hops are super popular here right now, and I think that's because there's a little bit of a tropical fruit sweetness to that contribute. It's still hoppy, it's still aromatic, it still has all that hoppiness going on, but there's a little bit of a sweetness there as well. So I'm finding that other parts of the country that haven't been as involved in craft beer for as long as we have up here, they're kind of getting to that peak, and it'll be interesting to see if they round off as well. That's my guess. My guess is that they'll round off a little bit, still be at a very high hop level. I think people will still always love their hops, and of course it's all varying. Some people like a maltier beer, some people like a hoppier beer, some people like a very Belgian yeast forward beer. But I think that you're going to find as a whole, the people who are drinking hoppy beers, you're going to find this kind of like this arms race peak, and then it just kind of backs off a little bit and steadies out a little bit. So we'll see what happens, but it's really interesting to pay attention to.
What about over in the UK right now? I mean, do you see one of the things that the British, what's interesting is IPA now has become a global sensation. So, like Jeff was mentioning how he traveled a lot. I have the benefit of covering a lot of ground myself. I was recently in Australia, been to the UK a lot, and Brazil and stuff. And you see the different pockets of a bona fide craft beer scene in its gestation period. And everyone is sort of celebrating the IPA as a flagship to kind of lead the charge in a lot of ways. That's a British style. I mean, you could say that Americans invented it, but they really didn't. They took an existing style and kind of tweaked it and made it their own. by increasing, well, we always have to do things bigger, better, stronger. But we also took English Kent Golding hops and Challenger hops and Funnel hops and all that. We replaced them with Citrus, Centennial, Cascade, Chinook, Simcoe, et cetera, et cetera. So is that same thing happening now in the UK? Like, are you seeing craft brewers doing these? Like, because I was wondering, like, if you have such a rich brewing history, are they doing, like, English hops when they do these aggressive beers, or are they just straight up importing our citrus? Because I've been over to those breweries and I see the citrus and the Amarillos over there. You know what I'm saying? So where's it going?
There's so much I could tell you on this. I think one of the things that you have to recognize, and that you probably know if you come over here, is that there's those of us that live in the beer bubble and drink all these kinds of very hoppy beers and very experimental beers, and we love what we're tasting because we love all kinds of beers and we love that kind of experimentation. And then probably most of British drinkers are a little bit more reserved than that and a little bit less tolerant to the kind of hop levels and your IBUs. There's, I mean, 70 IBUs in this. To me, it seems kind of really pleasantly bitter. Not particularly bitter, just really pleasantly bitter. But I think if you gave it to an average drinker in the UK, they probably might have a problem with it in the kind of hopping rate. But what's interesting is there is still a lot of hop development going on in the UK, trying to imitate American-style hops and also the Southern Hemisphere hops. And people will tell you that we can't grow that kind of thing in the UK. It's not possible, but actually it is. There's a variety that's come out, and I think that Firestone Walker managed to get a little teeny bit of it and have a go with it. It's called Jester, and it was an experimental variety, and the first time I tried it, I couldn't believe that it was grown here in the UK. It was grapefruity, it was big, it was tropical, it was all those kind of things. There's another variety that comes from Kent. It doesn't have a name yet, it's just got a number. It's called OZ97A.
Wait, what is it called?
It's OZ97A.
OZ97A.
And it's one of Professor Salmon's
mark
last...
me down for 5 boxes of that stuff, man.
It smells and tastes like a mango sorbet. You would not...
mango sorbet. We gotta get some of that, dude.
You would not believe that it came from the UK. So all that's going on, but at the same time, you'll find a little bit of a backlash over here against these big American hops and this big kind of fruity bitterness. We want earthy, peppery bitterness. We want session beers. And you'll find the British Hop Association really fighting the corner for Fuggles and Goldings and East Kent Goldings and those kind of traditional varieties. But I think we can enjoy all of those, can't we?
We can't. Well, yes, but no. Here's where I think you bring up an excellent point, because exactly what you just said is happening in the UK is happening in Germany. And so what's really interesting is that most people think all the innovation in this industry is coming from the craft brewers on the formulation side in terms of recipe development. There's clearly been innovations in retail and the pubs and distribution and stuff like that. But in terms of the product development side, they're like, oh, the brewers are coming up with these formulations and that's what's happening. That's not really what's happening. What's happening is the farmers it's really the agronomists and the farmers and the hop breeders are developing new strains, and then they give us those new strains, and then we kind of tinker around with them. So really, if you want to go to the source of where the innovation is, you have to go upstream. You have to go to the land, so to speak. So what I've been seeing is that in Germany, they're doing similar things to what you've been talking about. So you may have noticed, I think maybe the rest of the people on the panel, probably Matt and Lisa's seen it over at Belmont Station. There's these brewers that are getting these German, German experimental hops, essentially. There's one called...
Can I jump in with one thing?
Yeah, let's hear it.
I was at the Craft Brewers conference in Denver in April, and there was three or four new varieties of American hops being unveiled, the names of which escape me now, but I did write about them on my blog. And the thing that struck me about them was they were very British in character.
Yeah. Was Equinox one of them?
What? I'm sorry?
Was Equinox one of them?
I don't think it was. I think there was one that was called Cashmere, like the sweater.
I've never heard of that one. Man, I'm falling behind.
If you have a look on my blog, afemaileview.net, shameless plug, I wrote about them, and I wrote about the different varieties and what they tasted like. But the thing that struck me was they were very British in character. They were kind of very earthy, they were peppery, and it made me think, hold on, are the Americans suddenly going to go for these kind of earthy, kind of like, more subtle hops, if you like? So I'm very interested in what you're saying about Germany developing new hop varieties, because I've kind of that's not on my radar, so I'm very fascinated by that.
They are, just so you know, they are on American craft brewers' radars right now. German hop breeding, and here's why: the Germans have refused for years to participate in the sort of the craft brewing revolution because, from their perspective, all of their beer is craft beer, and they invented it, and they are very, with them, like we think it's a recent trend. For them, they've been doing it for thousands of years. So one thing that's been holding them back, though, is the Reinheitsgebot, right? Well, they're like, well, if we can't put spices and all these different things in our beers, what we can do is we can start tinkering around with the hops. But there was some type of provision in like the Reinheitsgebot about noble hop strains. You probably remember this. So they have this idea that you have to use heirloom strains of hops, and anything that's been hybridized and taints the precious bloodlines of the original hops is like not real. But now they're actually starting to do this breeding that they're producing such amazing hops. There's one that tastes like lemonade. It's crazy. It's sweet, and it tastes like and smells like a lemon, but it's sweet too. It's really phenomenal. So they got great hops, but then when you want to buy them, they're like $40 a pound or something. It's crazy stuff. So they're very limited on what they want to release or send over here. Which reminds me, because we haven't heard from Carlos yet on this, but when I was in Sao Paulo, we went to remember that day on a Sunday when we went to that the favela, and we went to that little brewery, and they had like a tasting room in front, and in the back they had like a tiny little brewing system, and we ate the moqueca, and we had like 3 or 4 different types of beers that the guy brought out. Anyway, I remember him telling me that he was bootlegging hops in from the United States at $84 a pound. To get some crazy hops. And can you tell us about what it's like over there? Like, how do these brewers end up making these beers? Are they buying hops on the black market, or what's the method you're doing this?
There is no black market on the hops.
We only got a couple minutes left. I just want to hear if we could just get a couple quick little jammers here.
Sure. The thing is that we are always looking for different hops, but most of the hops are, because of the hop farms contracts, they are delivered to the great breweries around the world, Czech hops and farms and US and UK. So in Brazil we have the hops that are the rest, and also that are the most common hops that we have around the world. So, and most of the times they are very expensive because of the importation process. So that's why we don't have a huge variety of hop aromas and hop flavors in our beers. So what happens most of the times is that we have one brewer that brings specific hops in his bag, from different trips. But it's very, very, very difficult to have access to different hops. We have available here what most people have available around the world. It's very difficult to be to be able to create different recipes or try to do different stuff given the this constraint because of the market, and since we cannot have hops because of the weather conditions in Brazil, we cannot have hops here. So we are struggling on this situation. We have hops in Argentina, so there is a few hop farms there. There is a few experiments in hops in Brazil, but very experimental yet, not successfully. So we are trying different routes, like hops from New Zealand, hops from France, because we know that, as you said, like IPAs and American IPAs are getting very popular, and most of the American hops are being used by American breweries. So we are trying different routes and different sources.
Right on. So one person, we just got to get a little quick insight here from Matt. So he hasn't been able to. We're going to finish with you, and then I'll wrap things up. But at least in your backyard, right? What are you seeing? Because what I've noticed is when you travel around the country now in the U.S., it's fragmented. And what I mean by that is like every single little region. So there's the Mid-Atlantic, the Southeast, Rockies, Great Lakes area, the Northeast, Texas, West Coast, Pacific Northwest. Every single region is almost developing its own vibe, right? Its own culture. So what is it like in Virginia now? I mean, one of the biggest announcements had been the new production facility for Stone, but there's also like a lot of little boutique brewers that have popped up. So what are you seeing happening there, and how are they embracing this?
Well, I think like everybody, North Carolina thinks that they're the future of craft beer, and Oregon thinks they're the future of craft beer. And if you go to Colorado, guess what they're going to say? This is where craft beer's at. I think that's just really a representative that it's everywhere. And I live in a small town of 20,000 people, and I have 3 craft breweries that I could walk to. They're nano breweries. They don't serve food. They don't distribute. They just brew beer and sell beer. I think the revolution that's happening is not. It takes some time to wash out, is what it really happens. We were talking about the hop. Everybody wants to make a bigger and a bigger beer. Triple IPAs are out. How long until someone makes a quad IPA that's 130 IBUs and you have to spit it out? You can't swallow it. That kind of that ratcheting it up is always going to happen. But I think it all comes back down to quality. You were saying that a little bit earlier, Shane, that you guys have a taste. And you have to deliver a product that is within what people expect from you. And I think that's a little bit wrong. I think that you have to deliver a product that is of a quality in whatever style you want to do. You can talk about high-res resin, the Sensi Harvest, but all of those are hoppy beers. But I like the crisp. I like some of the beers that diverge from that because you've made a quality product and you've brought that to market. There are some little breweries that are popping up with great ideals that aren't making good beer, and I don't care if they make something that's 115 IBUs that eats the paint off my car when I spill it. If you don't make a good beer, you're not going to be around. And I think the revolution is going to be good beer.
I think you have a very optimistic view of the brewery, and I would love to celebrate that because we try to instill that kind of message in our passion, and when we try to create beers, like to have a trademark that's based on quality of execution as opposed to taste is what would be the ideal scenario.
I mean, you still have to make good tasting beer because Anheuser-Busch executes extremely well. I mean, their brewing processes are fantastic and refined, but I don't like their beer. So. So you still have to make.
You could argue though that they're not brewing to taste; they're brewing for consistency.
Correct.
Right. And actually, you could even argue that they're brewing for lack of taste. So if you can make something that is virtually tasteless, or not tasteless, I think that's harsh, but basically as non-offensive as possible, right?
Highly drinkable.
Yeah, highly drinkable, non-offensive, meaning no one's like it's too hoppy, it's too bitter, it's too sour, it's too sweet. It's just the Goldilocks of beer, And then on top of that, it's the same thing every time, so it's totally predictable, dependable, and consistent. And that's a different intent. We still have a little bit of time, I've been informed by our camera guy. So actually, Aaron, would you be able to grab one of those cans? So the Wrexham cans section. Oh. So we got a little sneak peek here because you guys are so special. We have some fresh things here that are rolling off that have rolled off the Sixpoint production line. And what I want to do is share with you right now a beer that is going to be released in almost exactly 2 months from now in the new year, and it's a little something we call Beast Mode. It doesn't have a lid on it, as you can see, but this is the can. It commemorates. There's a deep story behind it, which we will go into in the content of our blog when the timing is right and when the beer is released. But it's going to be a porter. We're going to do a porter for a winter release. And I want to make sure that everyone who helped out and was on the call today gets some of these cans when they're released. So we have all of your shipping info now. But on that note, as long as we're on the kick here of doing some shameless plugging, next year, so we want to do a lot of hangouts next year. But next year we have 4 new cans that we're going to release. I talked about this with Matt earlier at our previous tasting, but we have a couple ones that we've made already in some capacity, like draft, and then we have a couple new ones that have never ever been released and are currently like part of our lab in the laboratories, and we're psyched. And all I can share with you on that is the vibe is going to be, for a couple of them, is what we were talking about: lower ABV, high flavor, low alcohol. So it's going to be pretty jamming.
Make them delicious, and we'll all buy them.
Yeah, hopefully they don't rot away on the shelves, right? So I wanted to get some. As long as we're on that kick too, and we're going around the table, we'll get everyone's last opinion here. So everyone, before we sign off, let's look into our crystal ball here. And everyone's got to give a prediction about the future of craft beer and what's going to happen, and or just some segment or something about the industry, whether it's formulas that are going to be popular or whatever. So we'll just go around the table. I'll start, and then we'll go over to you. But I actually think is what we're going to see a global trend of localization, and I don't think that that's revolutionary. I think that's happening in multiple industries. But I think that it's not just going to be the U.S. I think other countries that have big national brands, you're going to see their influence wane. And I think you're going to actually see what's really like the Oregon model. Oregon is going to be an archetype of what you're going to see around the United States and around the world. You're going to see people supporting local food producers and craft beer producers, and I think that that's going to continue to be a big trend. What are you thinking?
I do think a lot of these big American flavors we're talking about are going to become increasingly less about pushing the envelope, but more accepted on an international scale. So when we're facing 7% ABV or 70 IBUs, I don't think we're necessarily going to be talking in terms of what's specific to America, but we're going to be working more on like kind of an international stage.
So Sophie, what do you think is going to happen? Sophie, sorry.
I think that more of what you guys are doing in the States will come across the pond, and we'll see much more beer and food matching here in the UK, and I think that's absolutely vital to really spreading craft beer and really good beer into sort of, reaching new drinkers and new consumers. So I think we'll see more of that, and I think you'll see more beer sommeliers being accredited, because that's our thing in the UK. You could say equivalent to the kind of Cicerone in the US. I think we'll see more of that, more beer food matching, and just the industry grasping, as you say, the kind of idea of small well-made beers, and those giving the kind of big brands a battering. But if they're going to do that, I think in the UK they'll need to get their processes absolutely right, because obviously everything in the States is bigger, joking apart. But what I've noticed from, small breweries in the States, which aren't small, is, you guys are canning, you've got your processes right. I mean, for example, your cans are absolutely so good quality. I'm not wearing a hat, unlike most of the rest of my colleagues here, but I would take my hat off to you with the quality of your cans. And we need to raise our game in the UK, but I think that will come, and then we'll have some of the kind of craft beer kudos that you've got in the States.
Cool. So basically, a lot of what you're saying is you're going to continue to see more and more exports coming to the UK, and you're seeing basically a beer and food revolution happening almost simultaneously, driven by these pairings. And really, you're going to learn from a lot of the things that we're doing and be inspired by it, and that's going to help push you forward.
Absolutely, but I think it'll be British breweries that are being, it'll be their beers that are being drunk here in the UK, because I think people want to drink fresh beer and they also want to drink local beer, but they'll certainly be taking inspiration from you guys.
So Matt, what do you see on in your crystal ball?
I definitely think I see consolidation. Right now the number of breweries that are going up is astronomical. Up 3,500 or something like that now. I see craft beer as a market growing and taking away from the macro adjunct lagers, but I see it being done in a smaller number of breweries. I don't think there are 3,500 quality brewers out there that are making product. Once the hipsters with their jackets with the elbow patches get tired of paying $7 a pint for inferior beer and realize that they can go to the bottle shop across the street and get a 6-pack of Sixpoint or a 6-pack of some of the other regional breweries out there, I think some of that local stuff is going to go away, because regional is local enough compared to buying everything from St. Louis. So I see. I don't know about consolidation as much as a refinement of the quality of the brewing happening out there. I wish I were a brewer, because I really think in 3 to 5 years there's going to be a glut of 3-barrel brewing systems available on Craigslist really cheap.
Wow. Dr. Doom right there, Doctor.
Yeah. And Adam, the Republicans aren't afraid of your beer. They just deny
Dr. Doom has laid it down. No, but no, I think that was actually really refreshing, because when in the brewing industry, we always get put on these panels where they'll send you a press release about, like, it's going to the moon, this will never end. And they always tell you about all the new breweries that are opening, and times have never been better. And every time I see a press release that said it's never been this good, I'm like, whoa. That means whenever I read that, I've never been more concerned in my life. But at the same time, you're right. I was visiting a friend in Chicago last weekend and doing some business stuff, and he said, "What do you see happening in the industry? Where do you think it's going?" I said, "I think we're going to see consolidation." So I used the same word you did. And he goes, "What do you mean by that?" I go, "You're going to see breweries merge. Because it makes no sense for, like, let's say we have a big production facility and a guy down the street has a big production facility, and every week we get a grain delivery, and every week he gets a grain delivery, and every week we get our kegs dropped off at our facility, every week they do. And at some point in time you're like, what if we just put all that onto one truck? Why is it making 2 stops? Why are there 2 separate companies going to this thing 2 blocks down the street? And then you talk about how environmentally friendly everyone is, and that's part of their marketing. But it's like, well, what about all the synergies that you could by sharing resources? And that's what everyone talks about collaboration. But if you look at the way the future's going, is we realize that we have limited resources. We even have a limited amount of fresh water on the planet, which is a revolutionary concept. We tend to think that, like, water is just unlimited resource. It's not. There's a finite amount. You've been reading about Bear Republic. They're out of water. They're pulling out of states because they can't brew because they don't have water. And that's, like, unprecedented for breweries. So
what I think, I mean, is just as an addendum to what you said, is we're going to, instead of collaborating by making beers together, the future of craft brewing might be collaboration by sharing natural resources, raw materials, and even productive capacity. I see that moving in that direction. Lisa, do you want to? I mean, what's in your crystal ball? What do you see in the future?
Well, I'd like to say that I completely agree with you on that. I think that that we have to be able to cooperate. Maybe it's a co-op is a good word for it, but we have to be able to cooperate to make this work. More and more breweries are looking at and actually like communicating their efforts to reduce the amount of water that they use to brew, which is very, very important. Another thing that I'm hoping that maybe this is not so much crystal ball as it is wish list, but I would really love to see the word craft be taken off beer. We just talk about it as beer.
Exactly, especially when the definition of craft changes every couple of years due to someone's whims. You know, they're like, oh, this is what it used to be defined as. Oh, now we changed it. You know, it's like, well, why are you moving the goalposts on that shit? You know, like I thought we all agreed on what it meant, and now you changed it. To add to about what Matt was saying when I said that I thought there was going to be consolidation, did you hear the news yesterday how Green Flash merged with Alpine? So that was the first big merger. We've heard about buyouts. I mean, there's been Magic Hat and Blue Point, and 10 Barrel was the recent one. So those are all buyouts. Yeah, those are all like buyouts or acquisitions. But now we have a merger. I guess Magic Hat merged with Pyramid, but that was kind of a different thing. But you know, Green Flash merging with Alpine, two independently owned companies, not both in San Diego, but both in the general area. And both kind of making similar beers, maybe not the same, but similar profile. It made sense. It made sense because Alpine had a lot of demand, and they had no capacity, and Green Flash is adding capacity, so it made sense. Yeah. Jeff, what do you see? What's in your crystal ball?
Well, I had the fortune of being able to go around the world and see what the brewing industries were like in much more mature markets, Germany, Belgium, the UK, and that was really instructive because it's sort of like looking in the future. Right now we have all these companies that are owned by the founders who are filled with passion. They got into the business because they were filled with passion. But are their kids or their grandkids going to be filled with passion? Every time we saw what happened with Fritz Maytag. He looked at it and he thought, I'm going to cash in. I shouldn't say cash in. I should say that, things change, and maybe your kids or grandkids want to go off to be lawyers or artists or other things they're not passionate about beer. Every time that happens, there's a chance for the brewery to be sold. So when you talk about breweries that are 4th, 5th, 6th generation, they become much more rare in other parts of Europe. So I think consolidation will definitely happen, but I also think that the localization will happen too. And the other thing I've noticed when I travel around is that culture exerts a huge force on beer. So what people drink in Portland is different than what they drink even in San Francisco and San Diego, what to speak of Chicago and Brooklyn or the New York City area. So there's kind of these two forces that are coming together, and I think there was a weird kind of thing at mid-century where we all decided that Velveeta cheese and Wonder Bread was the way to go, and I think that was the anomaly. I think in the future people will like variety. There will be consolidation, but there will also be variety, and we'll see in America. This varies all over the place. Like the way the Czech Republic is going is very different from the United States. But we'll see in America.
For instance, I'm fascinated by what you just said there. What's happening in the Czech Republic? I haven't been there in years. Is there a scene there? Is there like a craft beer scene? Or what?
Yeah, it's super fascinating. So the Czech Republic, they're really interested in American-style beers, IPAs. But if you're a young brewer, so there's a lot of craft breweries, and Prague is now. You should totally go check out Prague. Prague is one of the coolest craft beer cities in the world. It's like, yeah, people used to say Prague was not a place to go. Prague is totally the place to go now. You can check out Prague. It rocks.
I always stayed away because of the ugly women, but I mean, I guess I'll put up with it. I'll put up with it. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, I've heard that.
But you've been to Prague, you know you're kidding. But yeah,
the thing is that this is the birthplace of a culture that produced Pilsner beer, which we now think of as like this insipid, just water, carbonated water, right? But if you ever had the original like Pilsner styles, they're the closest thing to an IPA that you can get that's archaic. And you know, like I remember drinking beer out of a cellar, in the Czech Republic, out of an oak barrel. It was a barrel-aged lager, and it was dry hopped, and it was about 50 IBUs, and it was just sublime.
Yeah.
So if they can bring back those traditions, that would be pretty ill. You know?
I think that's exactly what's happening. They're interested in what's happening in the world, but they're also, it's like if you're a Czech brewer and you can't brew a Svetli Ležák, a Pilsner style beer, you're nothing. So they all have to, they have to demonstrate that they can brew a Svetli Ležák, and they kind of, I think the example with the American IPA is really right on the spot, because each one has to make it a little bit different, or else, you know, like it's easy enough to make a beer like the guy down the street. You gotta figure out that tweak that makes it really your own beer within these really defined parameters, and they're totally rocking it. And then they're also doing other fascinating things. They're getting into ales, you know, in a way that Germany, for example, is not doing. So it's quite interesting. I have no idea what's going to happen in the Czech Republic. Fascinating though, but it's definitely different than the United States. And I think the United States, we're irrepressible. You know, we love variety. The mass market thing is a weird anomaly. So I think in the future, anybody who has an interesting way to make beer that's unique and tasty will find an audience. And I don't see that going away, no matter how badass AB is and how many craft breweries they try to buy up. I don't see that going away.
Do you think that there's going to be a Star Wars type thing going on where AB is kind of like, you know, like the Empire, and then the Rebellion is all these little brewers who are trying to figure out how to deliver their beer to market and fighting guerrilla warfare?
AB, no, that's already happened, and AB, no, they've lost. The Rebel Alliance has won, and you know, I mean, the thing is, that's why they're buying breweries like 10 Barrel. Because 10 Barrel has enormous credibility, and so they want that kind of credibility that they can't build on their own. It's the local credibility. They have I think they have a lot of credibility in making good beer that a lot of people like, and I don't want to underestimate that. That's an important thing. But when they try to go into a local market and make a beer that the locals like, that has local credibility, obviously they can't do that. So the way they're doing that is they're buying brands like Goose Island and 10 Barrel that have, you know, these local reputations that are unimpeachable. And I think what that underscores is that if you build a brewery that has an unimpeachable reputation locally, you're going to sell beer.
But okay, I mean, we could go on for hours on that topic, but isn't it a bit oxymoronic that you said they were just going to buy their credibility? I mean, you know, how do you buy credibility? I mean, isn't credibility generated through your work, through your deeds, through your actions? You can't buy it. I mean, buying it is fake. So,
well, I think yeah, you have to look at markets, right? So there's always a mass market for everything. If you look at cheese, you know, Kraft sells way more cheese than anybody else. But there was a time when Kraft cheese had something like 99% of the market, just like mass market lagers had 99% of the market. I think it's really possible anymore. I think if you want to be a craft brewery that captures 50% of the market, 60% of the market, it's going to be very hard to do. But if you want to have a craft brewery that's selling 1 million barrels a year and makes really nice local beer, you can totally do that. I think it's possible for us to both expand the notion of what a craft brewery is and think in terms of really fairly large quantities. I mean, this is another thing when I was going around the world. A 1 million barrel brewery, that almost no breweries are 1 million barrels. This is an insanely large brewery. And we have 1 million barrel craft breweries that are making completely authentic, I mean, Sierra Nevada makes a ton of beer and they still use whole hops, so it's possible to use traditional methods and sell a ton of beer. If you want to capture half the market in your country, you're probably looking at a different type of beer. And I think you're looking at going from making Gorgonzola to Sophie, you probably won't understand this reference, but an American cheese that's a mass market thing that's very cheap that becomes a commodity. If you're not making a commodity beer, if you're making a craft beer, a beer that people are drinking, paying a little extra for the flavor, I think you'll always have a good market if you make a quality product. And I do think that in the future we'll see that quality product be keyed into local preferences for flavor and styles. That's what I think. We'll see. You asked us to predict. My predictions are famously terrible, so we'll see.
Good. So I'll just have you pick the stocks from my retirement fund. I'll end up in a trailer park. So I wanted to get a feeling here to close things up with Carlos, because what's interesting is that now looking back at this, if you look at every single person who was able to contribute tonight, all of you are in at what I would call the ground floor. You are either you're dialed into the scene at a very epicenter nucleus type situation. Carlos is rocking the scene on the grassroots level. Where do you see Brazil going? And let's not talk about global, but where do you see Brazil, or maybe even Sao Paulo, going in the next 5 to 10 years? Where is it headed?
Well, Shane, I truly believe that we are still looking for a Brazilian craft beer personality, So we have a little bit of American, we have German breweries in Brazil. We have craft beers trying to follow North America tradition, but we also see a lot of craft beers using like Brazilian fruits, Brazilian ingredients. So I'm happy, I'm really happy about the future of craft beer in Brazil. That's why I'm in this business. But I truly believe that the situation that we are living now is about finding our own personality, try to create our own tradition in this market. And and this is something that that depends on the market. How customers will perceive the products that we are brewing in Brazil, and also depends on the craft brewers trying to create and to brew, different and local beers. We are still struggling on taxations and big companies, but I truly see a very positive and good perspective and future for Brazilian craft beer scene.
So I wanted to touch on what you just said, because you were lucky to have such a keen insight, and then we are fortunate enough, Aaron and I were, when you showed us some of the underbelly, so to speak, of the beer scene in Sao Paulo. So the company that now owns 25% of the global market share of beer, AB InBev, started in your country, and they went out and they bought 90% of all the they got 90% of all the productive capacity in the market share of beer. And then they went out on a global buying spree to buy every brewery, including Anheuser-Busch, which is the largest corporate acquisition in the history of finance, $52 billion that these guys bought Anheuser-Busch for. Meanwhile, when we were in Sao Paulo, we saw people brewing beers on like little tiny systems, and it was so amazing to see like such a grassroots phenomenon. But then when I heard that they were paying $80 or $90 for a pound of hops, and they were paying $5 a pound per grain, and you can't get a license unless you wait 18 months and you pay $10,000 to get a brewing license, I was like, wow, there is no possible way that any single one of these breweries that you introduced us to is making any money at all. And it's like, they must be doing it for some other reason, and they must just be like, they want to survive. They're just dying to make this work. That's super inspirational, because like when you read about these early books about these guys, the craft brewers, who they had no wholesaler, no one would buy their products, and they're brewing 5,000 barrels a year, and they're using old dairy tanks. Like Jeff, you mentioned like 10 barrel. It's just unbelievable that someone could start a brewery and then, you know, in 2006 or 7 or whatever, and then 8 years later sell it to Anheuser-Busch for some undisclosed amount or whatever. Like, come on, man. That was never going to be possible. No one would ever have thought that would even be conscionable. So I'm interested to see the way that this goes, but like I said, we can probably go on for hours, but we've been going on this for almost 90 minutes. I wanted to wrap it up, but I would like to actually end it with a toast and I want to call upon Sophie to do a toast, actually. You're so articulate and charming in your delivery. So do you have a classic toast that you could end this with?
There's only one classic toast. Unfortunately, I've drunk all my beer and I'm not opening another one because I'll probably die before bedtime. But the classic British toast is just simply to say, cheers.
Oh, oh no. All right, well, we're going to... All right, well, then I'm
It's as simple as that. Oh, no, there was a really good one, actually. With Nell and I.
Let's do the cheers. Let's do the cheers. Do it.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you to everyone who participated. And like I said, now that we have your shipping info and everything, let's make sure that we get a little bit of this jammer.
Oh my God, we can't wait to get hold of that. You tease.
Yeah, jammer. All right, thank you. Cheers and good night. Happy global warming.
All right.
We'll be buried in seawater soon. We'll make some goza.